You've worked hard since you arrived in the city, gained loads of experience, developed your skills. Everywhere you look, you see something you helped build. But now, you're looking to the future, and maybe you're thinking about where you come from. In Ireland, we need planners, carpenters, plumbers, roofers, engineers, architects, site managers, and more. We need you, with all your skills and knowledge, to help us build thousands of homes. You've built the world. Now come back and build the home that built you. For more information, visit gov.ie/Building Ireland. Brought to you by the Government of Ireland.
This episode is brought to you by Paranormal Playback, a new podcast where hosts Shar, Mel and Laura recap the spooky and entertaining world of paranormal reality TV. Each week they take a fresh look at popular shows like Ghost Adventures and Kindred Spirits, blending humour with insight as they pull apart what's happening on screen. The three of them are a mix of believers and skeptics, which makes for really fun conversations, sometimes leaning into mystery, other times asking the questions viewers might be thinking themselves. With their background in creative production, they know how these shows are put together, so they're great at pointing out the moments that feel real versus the ones that might be more for the cameras. And their segment, This Old Haunt, digs into the true crime side of paranormal investigations, separating fact from fiction. With Halloween coming up, it's the perfect time to add something spooky, funny and a little addictive to your playlist. For even more spooky, ghostly, paranormal content with a humorous spin, go check out Paranormal Playback. It was early 2022. Life was different following the pandemic and the year or so of recovery that followed it, but life was good. Like most people, we were finally able to see family and friends again more frequently, especially my grandfather. He was in his 90s and he still lived on his own, but he was as sharp as a tack. I made sure every chance I got to go visit him or bring him up to my house so that he could spend time with my 3-year-old son. He was the only grandchild in the entire family, but how lucky was he that he also had a great-grandfather. It wasn't too long into 2022 when we learned my grandfather's lung cancer had returned and he decided to forego any treatment. My grandmother had passed 10 years prior and he had already fought cancer once and he just felt like it was his time. He moved in with my parents for the last few years, and naturally his health deteriorated quickly. His mind was always strong, but his body failed him as the days and the weeks went by. One afternoon I got a call from my mum that my grandfather was soon to pass and that I should come quickly to say my goodbyes. He was already unconscious by the time I got to their house, but was comfortable and surrounded by family. We each said our goodbyes knowing that he didn't have long. And before I left, I remember placing a photo of my son on his pillow. By the time I got home, my wife and son were fast asleep and I soon followed. It was just so emotional and physically exhausting, and I figured I needed as much sleep as possible before the inevitable bad news would come. But that a slumber would soon be interrupted. It was around 2 a.m. that my son woke up screaming and crying. For a 3-year-old, this isn't uncommon, but what followed was something I never experienced. We opened the door to his room, and as we walked in, he was sitting up in his bed, pointing to the corner of the room and crying. And he said, "There's a man in my room." I don't really remember how I reacted, but my wife and I looked at each other a bit confused and shocked. He had had nightmares before, but never anything this vivid. And he just kept on repeating that there was a man in his room and pointing to the corner. We worked on calming him down and assuring him that it was just a bad dream and that he was safe. And after a while, he finally calmed down and he fell back asleep. And my wife and I went back to our room, and then I noticed my phone. There were multiple messages from my mom saying that my grandfather had just passed. As saddened as I was and expectant of the news, I just stared at the phone, kind of dumbfounded. And without skipping a beat, she went, "That's your grandfather. That was him in there just now." And it still makes me tear up thinking that the minute he passed, the first thing he had to do was to see my grandson. And you think that that's where the story ends, but every night up until my grandfather's funeral, my son had encounters. Early one evening, just after putting him to bed, we heard him laughing on the monitor. And we went in to check on him, and he was looking all around the room, laughing and giggling. When I asked him what was so funny, he said, "It's the bunny, Daddy. There's a bunny running around." The next night, same thing, only this time he said, "It's the bunny and his wife." On the third night of this occurrence, the night before my grandfather's funeral, I made a point to stay in the room with my son, and sure enough, the bunnies came to visit him. Now, I couldn't see a thing, but to him they were just as real as you or me. Only on this final night, he said they were talking to him. When I asked him what they were saying, he said, "They say to please remember them." I just smiled and replied, "I won't let him forget you." I believe my son was seeing my grandmother and grandfather, and I think they wanted to visit my son one more time before finally passing on fully, and that they wanted to appear to him in a way that wouldn't frighten him. That same night, my dad had a dream that he was waiting in a bus terminal and that my grandmother and grandfather, his parents, arrived at the terminal to say goodbye before they boarded a bus. I'm guessing when my grandmother passed 10 years prior, she waited for my grandfather to join her. And now that they were together, they could both move on from that wayward station and head towards whatever journey lay next. After that night, there were no more visitations or weird dreams. Just peace and calm in knowing they both had gotten to say their proper goodbyes and have one last visit with my son. Thank you to Justin for sending in our first paranormal experience. And now, let's get into our next. Throughout my life, my family and I have grown up with cats as pets. We had many different cats throughout the years, and when they've passed away, we've always been very sad. When I was 10 years old, we got 2 kittens from a family's friend. One white with a grey streak on his head, and the other was all black. The white and grey cat we called Snowball, and unfortunately before we could get him spayed, he ran away. Mittens was the black cat. Luckily stayed with us until she was 16 years old. She was such an indoor cat and only went out to go to the toilet or to get us gifts, of which we would rather not have. Anyway, Mittens, our cat, was getting old, and really all she did was sleep and go out to the toilet. Mum was a head teacher, but at this point when Mittens was 16, she was retired. She still did supply work around different schools. This one day, as she reversed down the drive on her way to school, she felt a bump, as if she had rolled over something. Her first thought was, oh no, the cat. She examined everywhere, but no sign of a cat or anything that could show something had been hurt. That day at school, when she was in the playground, a child came running over and said, Miss, there's a black cat under your car." And as you can imagine, my mum was filled with horror, thinking that she had run over our cat. But when she went over with the child to look, she saw a perfectly healthy black cat by the wheel staring up at her. She ended up going back into school, and as she started her next lesson, she was called out of class by a phone call. It was my dad to say that he had found Mittens dead under the bush in our front garden. It was such a strange series of events, but it got stranger. As a teenager, Mittens used to sleep at the bottom of my feet every night. Without fail, she would meow at the door or scratch it to be let in, and then make herself comfortable. When I moved to London and began teaching there, she found different spots around the house instead. I still remember the day my sister called to say she had died. We were all devastated. She was part of the family. I often came back home to Northern Ireland about 4 to 6 times a year, and every time I stayed in my old room. One night, as I was falling asleep, I felt a soft pawing at my feet, heard a purring, and felt a tail and body moving around and pushing against me. And instantly I sat upright and looked straight down at my feet, but nothing was there. I just remember my heart pounding, and I was afraid to sleep for the rest of the night, although I eventually did. Strangely, I didn't dwell on it and spent many nights after in that room with nothing happening. Years later, my mum and I were talking about all the cats that we'd had, and I told her about that night. And she looked up at me in surprise and said that it had happened to her too, when she had slept in my room one night. And we believed that Mittens had come back to comfort us and let us all know that she was still there. Thank you to Sian for sending in our second paranormal encounter. And now let's get into our final one. When I was a kid, I was playing in the garden one day with my toys when I collapsed and my parents rushed me to hospital. I had fell into a coma, and after being in the hospital for a few days, I was finally diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. A few days later, I finally woke up from my coma. My parents were obviously very relieved, as the doctors were suspecting the worst. Fast forward to my teenage years, I was 16 years old. I remember watching TV in my room engrossed in a documentary that had randomly come on the telly. It was this fascinating documentary about a 7-year-old boy who had always spoken about his real family and his other life. When his mother would question him about this, he could recall a full address, the scenery, the names of the family members and specific memories. This went on for years, and his mother eventually grew tired of it and decided to research the address and family. She arranged for the boy to meet the family that lived there, and it turned out that he was recalling family members who had long passed away. And the memories were of events that had actually happened. I thought that this was incredibly interesting, so I went downstairs to tell my mum about it while she was cooking dinner. When she had finished, she said, "You done something like that once. It was really strange." And I replied to her saying, "What do you mean?" feeling really confused. And she went on to say something that no one had ever told me before. She said, "A few days after you'd woken up from your coma, I asked if you could remember anything from your long sleep. And you said you had a friend that sat by your bed and kept telling you to wake up. And I asked what they looked like. And you said it was a man with a white top, a hat, and funny glasses. And you described something in their mouth, but it wasn't clear. A few weeks later, I had you sat on my lap. We hadn't long moved into this place, so I was looking through the photo albums as we were unpacking. And I got to a photo of Grandpa, and you got so excited pointing to his photo while shouting, 'Wake up, friend, wake up, friend.' I asked if that was the man by your bed, and you were so happy and said, 'That's my friend, my wake up friend.' My mum said the photo was of my dad's dad wearing what he always wore, his flat cap, a white vest, glasses, and smoking his pipe. The only thing is, I've never met him. He passed away long before I was born. I also have no memory of this incident with the coma or photo album, so I thought my mum was just playing with me. I told her I didn't believe her, but she insisted it happened. She told me that if I didn't believe her, go and ask my dad and my brothers. So I went upstairs and started telling my brother what Mum had just told me. Walked into the room and said, "Justin, I was just watching a documentary about," and Mum said that when I was little, and before I could finish, he cut me off and said, "Oh, and you've seen Grandpa? Yeah, that was really weird. And you also did the action of rolling a cigarette in your car seat." And I was confused again and said, "What?" And he went on to say, "Yeah, so Grandpa used to smoke pipes and cigarettes, and he used to always be rolling cigarettes, and you used to mimic the actions he used to do. It was just like him. It was like you were possessed or something, but not in a scary way." For some reason, no one in my family ever told me this until I brought up that documentary. I always felt I knew Grandpa even though I never met him, and I guess now I know why. Thank you, Sophie, for sending in our final paranormal experience for this episode. Apologies if my voice sounds a little bit off this episode. I think there's some sort of throat thing going on. Don't forget, if you have your own paranormal experience that you'd like me to narrate on the show, you can send it to scaryaparanormalpodcast@gmail.com, and join me next time for another episode of Scary.
Dibrig tú go díon nó chánig tú go dtí an chathair seo, fuair his neart taithí agus d'urbar de chuid scileanna. I ngacháte éigean tú, fecinn tú rud éige na chabhraigh tú a thógáil, ach inis tá tú ag féchant ar an todhchaí, agus beidir go bhfuil tú ag smaoinemh ar an áit as a dagan tú. In éireann, tastaíonn pleanálathe, siúnéirí, ploméirí, díanadóirí, inaltóirí, altíirí, banistóirí láithreáin agus níos móhain. Tastaíonn túhain, le do chuid scileanna agus taithí go léir, chun cabhrúlinn na mílte tithe a thógáil. Tá an domhain tóga agat, a níos tar arás agus tógan teach a thóg tú. Tuile eolais ag gov.ie/Building Ireland. Teachtareacht ó rialtas na hÉireann.
Hey, I'm Paige DeSorbo, and I'm always thinking about underwear.
I'm Hannah Berner, and I'm also thinking about underwear, but I prefer full coverage. I like to call them my granny panties.
Actually, I never think about underwear. That's the magic of Tommy John.
Same. They're so light and so comfy, and if it's not comfortable, I'm not wearing it.
And the bras, soft, supportive, and actually breathable.
Yes, Lord knows the girls need to breathe. Also, I need my PJs to breathe and be buttery soft and stretchy enough for my dramatic tossing and turning at night. That's why I live in my Tommy John pajamas.
Plus, they're so cute because they fit perfectly.
Put yourself on to Tommy John.
Upgrade your drawer with Tommy John. Save 25% for a limited time at TommyJohn.com/comfort. See site for details.
You're invited to spend an evening on Fremont Avenue. For generations, this house has been home to soulful music, good food, and cutthroat card games. Saints and sinners, unexpected laughs and unspoken truths. Good times, hard times, and of course, family. Always family. So pull up a chair and join us at Fremont Avenue, a world premiere play only at Arena Stage. Now in performances. Tickets at arenastage.org.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
You've worked hard since you arrived in the city, gained loads of experience, developed your skills. Everywhere you look, you see something you helped build. But now, you're looking to the future. And maybe you're thinking about where you come from. In Ireland, we need planners, carpenters, plumbers, roofers, engineers, architects, site managers, and more. We need you, with all your skills and knowledge, to help us build thousands of homes. You've built the world. Now come back and build the home that built you. For more information, visit gov.ie/Building Ireland. Brought to you by the Government of Ireland.
Hey, I'm Paige DeSorbo, and I'm always thinking about underwear.
I'm Hannah Berner, and I'm also thinking about underwear, but I prefer full coverage. I like to call them my granny panties.
Actually, I never think about underwear. That's the magic of Tommy John.
Same. They're so light and so comfy, and if it's not comfortable, I'm not wearing it.
And the bras, soft, supportive, and actually breathable.
Yes, Lord knows the girls need to breathe. Also, I need my PJs to breathe and be buttery soft and stretchy enough for my dramatic tossing and turning at night. That's why I live in my Tommy John pajamas.
Plus, they're so cute because they fit perfectly.
Put yourself on to Tommy John.
Upgrade your drawer with Tommy John. Save 25% for a limited time at TommyJohn.com/comfort. See site for details.
Fall is all about cozy comforts, but when you're prioritizing your health, it's easy to feel like you're missing out. With Hero Bread, you can enjoy all your fall favorites because they're made with Hero Bread sliced bread loaves, tortillas, bagels, dinner rolls, and more. Try their all-new Hero Noodles with 12 grams of protein and just 80 calories. You won't believe Hero Bread's options have 0 to 5 grams net carbs and are high fiber from the taste and texture. They've even got small batch drops of indulgent favorites like the popular Hero Croissant. And right now, Hero Bread is offering 10% off your order. Go to hero.co and use code FALL25 at checkout. That's FALL25 at HERO.co. All figures are per serving of Hero Bread. Contains 2 to 18 grams of fat per serving. See the product nutrition panels on hero.co for more information.